Golems. Golems famous in Jewish folklore. Golems are most often depicted as beings created from inanimate matter, such as clay or mud, which have been brought to life to serve some purpose. For example, in some stories, a golem is created to defend against anti-Semitic attacks. According to legend, golems are uniquely obedient and will follow exact and literal orders, so their creators definitely had to be careful with what they asked them to do. It assumed its present connotation in the Middle Ages, when many legends arose of wise men who could bring effigies to life by means of a charm or of a combination of letters, forming a sacred word, or one of the names of God. In the 16th century, the golem acquired the character of protector of the Jews in time of persecution, but also had a frightening aspect. Golem's negative image has to do with the emergence of Christianity. In Christianity, only two beings can give life: the Almighty and the Devil. Creation of golems were viewed as devilish. Oni. In Japanese myth, Oni are people who were so truly wicked in their lives that they transformed into demons in hell. These giant scary monsters with red or blue skin, horns, and tusks are traditionally the servants of hell. They enact violent punishment on evildoers and will eat just about anything, including humans. While stories or depictions of Oni may vary, they are always seen as dangerous and powerful villains. According to Japanese Buddhism, Oni constitute one of the 6 orders of life in the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth known as samsara. When a particularly wicked person dies, it is believed that they will either be reborn as or transformed into an Oni. According to Shinto myths, a part of the soul of either a deity or a mortal, known as an aramitama, can become an Oni if that person or deity has been insulted or wronged in some way. Cyclops. Most often depicted as a giant with one eye, the Cyclops, which means circle-eyed, first appeared in ancient Greek mythology. Somewhat lesser known than the classic Greek gods, the Cyclopes lived in isolation and tended sheep or goats without any government, society, or community. While scorned for their lawlessness, it was the Cyclopes who created Zeus's thunderbolts, Hades' helmet, which made the wearer invisible, Poseidon's trident, and Artemis's silver bow. So we should give them some credit for their creativity. The most famous Cyclops is Polyphemus, who captured the Greek hero Odysseus and his men only for them to escape by blinding the poor giant. Ogre. An ogre is a legendary monster, usually depicted as a large, hideous, man-like being that eats ordinary human beings, especially infants and children. Ogres frequently feature in mythology, folklore, and fiction throughout the world. They appear in many classic works of literature and are most often associated in fairy tales and legend with a taste for infants. The word gained popularity from its use in the late 17th century by Charles Perrault, the author of Tales of Mother Goose. Leprechauns are figures in Irish folklore who guard hidden treasure. Regarded as small and incredibly agile male fairies or goblins, they most often guard a pot of gold. Leprechauns live solitary lives and can be a source of mischief for the unwary. Leprechauns are infamous for being extremely difficult to catch or trap. Even if a leprechaun is caught, the captor must keep them always within sight, or they will not give away the location of their treasure, usually a crock of gold coins. Leprechauns share many characteristics with more ancient creatures from Irish Celtic and wider European mythology. But since the 19th century CE, they have risen to the dominant position of being the most recognizable symbol of Irish folklore. Gnomes. Gnomes tend to live in hilly meadows and rocky woodlands. In Huygens' book, it says they live in 3 trees, the house itself, with a hidden entrance from another tree, and then a third is the supply room, with grains, beans, potatoes, and everything else the gnomes may need during the winter. Gnomes consist of a number of different types. The most common is the forest gnome, who rarely comes into contact with man. The garden gnome lives in old gardens and enjoys telling melancholy tales. Dune gnomes are slightly larger than their woodland brethren. House gnomes have the most knowledge of man, often speaking his language. It is from this family that gnome kings are chosen. Farm gnomes resemble their house brethren, but are more conservative in manner and dress. Siberian gnomes have been more interbred than other gnomes and associate freely with trolls. They are much larger than the other types and have an infinitely more nasty nature. Goblins. Goblins supposedly live in grottos, but attach themselves to households, snatch night clothes off the bodies of sleeping people, move furniture at night, and flee after rapping on walls and doors. They are thought to help parents, discipline children by rewarding the latter with presents when they are good and punishing them when they are disobedient. The word goblin derives from the Greek kobolos, rogue. Fairies, a mythical being of folklore and romance, usually having magic powers and dwelling on Earth in close relationship with humans, typically having green clothes and hair, living underground or in stone heaps, and characteristically exercising magic powers to benevolent ends, commonly in the shape of a delicate, beautiful, ageless winged woman dressed in diaphanous white clothing, inhabiting fairyland, but making usually well-intentioned intervention in personal human affairs, or as a tiny, mischievous, and protective creature generally associated with a household hearth. Gorgon. Another memorable mythical creature from ancient Greece, the Gorgons, such as the famous Medusa, were vicious monsters capable of turning victims to stone with just one look. The Gorgon's appearance was an interesting mix of beautiful and frightening, with their most notable feature being the fact that they had live snakes instead of hair. Gorgon myths are important lessons in not being tricked by beauty alone. In early classical art, the Gorgons were portrayed as winged female creatures. And some of you may be asking, what's the difference between Gorgon and Medusa? In Greek mythology, a Gorgon is a monstrous creature with the power to turn people to stone with a gaze, while Medusa is the most famous Gorgon. The Gorgons are a group of three sisters, with Medusa being the only mortal one. Mermaid, a fabled marine creature with the head and upper body of a human being and the tail of a fish. Similar divine or semi-divine beings appear in ancient mythologies like fairies, had magical and prophetic powers. Depending on the story or locale, mermaids can be portrayed as either good and helpful, mischievous and playful, or even destructive and territorial. In general, sailors are encouraged to avoid them as much as possible and be cautious should an encounter be made. Mermaids enjoy singing and combing their long hair. At times, they will lure sailors to the rocks with their songs, or encourage handsome young men to their homes in the deep seas. Unsurprisingly, this usually results in the human drowning, but in some cases the men survive to see their underwater kingdoms. Mermaids live for a very long time, but according to some legends, do not have a soul. And that was the first part of mythological creatures from around the world. I hope to see you in part 2. Until next time.